It's finally Friday, everybody. We'll celebrate here on Locked On Vols by discussing VFLs in the NFL draft, the history, how many first rounders, how many second rounders, and the recent Vols who have gotten drafted. Of course, Tennessee hopes to have 4 players to hear their names called over the weekend. We'll break into that in segment 1. Some stats regarding the NCAA transfer portal for football. It's kind of mind-blowing. That's in segment 2. And Lindsay Crosby, a fellow Locked On podcast host, we'll stop by to break down the Auburn series this weekend for the top-ranked Volunteers. That's your Friday lineup, and this is Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. How we doing on this Friday morning? Congratulations for making it to the end of the week. And go ahead and kill the rest of the day and get on to your weekend. This is Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee. I write for the rival site that covers the University of Tennessee. That is volquest.com. And if you're new to the show, welcome to it. Thanks so much. You can find this podcast every single morning. In fact, it's your first listen is what I hear. And you can find it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Got a big show coming up today, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to, obviously, it's the NFL Draft's first round was last night. Some Tennessee players hoping to hear their names called maybe tonight, but certainly this weekend for sure. We've been talking about that a little bit all week long. But let's look back at some Tennessee Vols in the NFL Draft and reflect a little bit. Some interesting transfer portal notes, like I said, and then Lindsay Crosby talking baseball in segment 3. So let's go ahead and get started right here for a couple of things that we missed throughout the week. Nothing too major. James Robinson, an offensive lineman for the University of Tennessee, has hit the transfer portal. Justin Powell, a shooting guard for the Tennessee basketball team, has hit the transfer portal. I thought Justin Powell was going to stay because, remember, this is to my understanding. I mean, he's going to have to sit out a year if unless he transfers down, because he used his one-time transfer when he came from Auburn to the University of Tennessee. And so I think that he's a good player and everything, but I thought he was going to stay. I guess the addition of Tyreek Key kind of forced him into the portal. So the basketball roster continues to overhaul. There's more and more spots open for the Tennessee football team now with some players leaving. And a couple of you guys have messaged me and asked, I don't have an official number exactly of how many spots are open that Tennessee can go and get via the transfer portal. I do want to say it's around 5, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But Tennessee will be active in the transfer portal, I assure you, and I think it's going to be a lot sooner rather than later. So those are a couple things that I wanted to get out of the way. Of course, I saw it. We just not a whole lot to talk about in that aspect. But regardless, we'll move on and we'll discuss Tennessee Vols in the NFL draft. So Tennessee has had 374 all-time draft picks dating all the way back to 1936. Of course, that includes the AFL draft as well before they merged in 1967. So 374 all-time draft picks coming from the University of Tennessee. 46 Vols have been drafted in the first round. That ranks top 10 nationally. 46 Vols have been drafted in the first round. That ranks top 10 nationally. 83 Vols have been drafted since the year 2000. 15 of those Vols have been drafted in the first round. Again, 83 Vols have been drafted since the year 2000, the turn of the century, 15 of which have been drafted in the first round. And every single NFL franchise has drafted a University of Tennessee football player. When you think about that, that's pretty incredible. Every single franchise has drafted a player from the University of Tennessee. You look at recent years for the Volunteers being drafted. Of course, you had 2 last year. Josh Palmer going 3rd round to the Chargers. Trey Smith sliding all the way to the 6th round to the Chiefs. We knew it then. We definitely know it now. What a joke that teams passed on Trey Smith that entire time. Thought he was going to get drafted in the 3rd round last year, if you remember, but he slid all the way down to the 6th round. Go back to 2020. Tennessee had 2 players drafted as well. Darrell Taylor, 2nd round to the Seahawks. Juwan Jennings, a 7th round to the 49ers. Both of those players had really good second years in the National Football League, playing their roles for their respective teams. Nobody drafted for Tennessee in 2019. In 2018, you had 3. You had Rashawn Golden in the 3rd round to the Carolina Panthers, John Kelly in the 6th round to the LA Rams, and Khalil McKenzie to the Kansas City Chiefs. That was in the 6th round as well. In 2017, there's quite a few, actually. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Of course, headlined by Derek Barnett, the last volunteer player to be drafted in the 1st round. 14th overall by the Eagles. Alvin Kamara was drafted in the 3rd round. You had Cameron Sutton in the 3rd round to the Steelers. You had Jalen Reeves-Maybin in the 4th round of the Lions, Josh Malone in the 4th round of the Bengals, Joshua Dobbs 4th round of the Steelers as well. And most of those players have made a really nice career. Obviously, Derek Barnett he just re-signed with the Eagles. He hasn't lived up to 1st round talent. I understand that, but he has re-signed. He's on a 2nd contract now with the Eagles. Alvin Kamara is going through some legal issues right now, some off the field stuff, but he's been a star. You guys know that. Cameron Sutton's been a really, really nice pro. Jalen Reeves-Maybin has been a very, very nice pro for the Detroit Lions. Josh Malone's bounced around a little bit. I believe he's with the Tennessee Titans right now. And, of course, Joshua Dobbs is now with the Cleveland Browns. Nobody drafted in 2016 or 15, which is just not good for the University of Tennessee. And then, of course, everybody's been drafted in every single year dating back to that for quite some time, at least to the turn of the century. Yeah, to the turn of the century, everybody's been drafted dating back to the year 2000. So let's look at some of those Vols that have stuck out, right? Let's look at some of those Vols who have been 1st round selections. I mentioned that the latest one was, of course, Derek Barnett, 2017, 14th overall to the Eagles. Prior to him in 2014, Juwan James was drafted 19th overall to the Miami Dolphins. Before that, Cordell Patterson in 2013, 29th overall to the Minnesota Vikings. And he's had, all-decade team in terms of kick returning. He had a great season last year with the Atlanta Falcons, and it's been good to see him. Dan Williams was drafted by the Cardinals back in 2010 in the 1st round, 26th overall. You had Eric Berry, of course, 5th overall by the Chiefs in 2010. Robert Ayers was a 1st round pick in 2009 with the Broncos, 18th overall. You continue to go back. Gerard Mayo, 10th overall to the Patriots in 2008. Now he's a guy that's in head coaching conversations right now. The other 1st round pick in 2007 was Justin Harrell, 16th overall to the Packers. Tennessee had a lot of 1st round picks in the early 2000s. Jason Allen, who was a great player, 1st round, 16th overall to the Dolphins in 2006. Albert Hainsworth to the Titans, 15th overall in 2002. Dante Stallworth, 13th overall to the Saints in 2002. John Henderson, 9th overall to the Jaguars in 2002. Boy, and then you look at 2000, Sean Ellis, 12th overall to the Jets. And then you had Jamal Lewis, 5th overall to the Ravens in the year 2000. So those are the recent 1st round selections. You go and look at the 2nd round selection. I mentioned Taylor in 2020. Justin Hunter, boy, was I so excited when Justin Hunter was drafted by the Tennessee Titans. That was a 2nd round selection, 34th overall back in 2013. Montario Hardesty was a 2nd round selection to the Browns, in 2010. Turk McBride was a 2nd round pick. Aaron Sears was a 2nd round pick. Kevin Barnett was a 2nd round pick. Eddie Moore, Travis Henry, Deion Grant, Casey Coleman, all those guys were 2nd round picks here recently. And then I'm not going to go through and read you every single draft pick for the University of Tennessee, but Tennessee, top 10 in all-time wins in college football FBS rankings. You have 46 Vols who have been drafted in the 1st round all-time. That's a top 10 ranking. 374 all-time draft picks dating all the way back to 1936. There's been a great history with the University of Tennessee putting players in the National Football League, and there should be 4 more added to that list this weekend. Wasn't last night, maybe tonight. I predict Matthew Butler to be drafted first, but really it can be a combination of all 4 of these guys. They're mid-round guys. I think you could see as high as a pick tonight, late in the 3rd round, not likely, but possibly late in the 3rd round. And I think all these guys will be off the board midway through round 5. Matthew Butler, Alontae Taylor, Velus Jones, and Cade Mays. Other Tennessee players who have declared for the NFL draft, who likely won't be drafted but should be noted or on the board, will likely be in a camp when it's all said and done. Theo Jackson, Javonte Payton, Jaquan Blakely, those guys could probably latch on. Maybe not Blakely, but I believe Payton and Jackson will certainly be in a camp. Blakely might be, and then Kenneth George Jr., who I believe will not be in a camp this summer. But those are some other guys to potentially pay attention to there. So draft season's here. Round 1 was last night. And of course, if you aren't keeping up with it all on the Locked On Podcast Network, the Locked On NFL YouTube page, you're missing out. They've got great coverage. They killed it last night, and they will knock it out of the park all weekend long. Rounds 2 and 3 tonight, 4, 5, 6, and 7 tomorrow. And of course, we'll recap all of these Tennessee Vols and where they were drafted and the situations on Monday's show. Coming up next, some interesting stats on the transfer portal. You're not going to want to miss these, okay? These are eye-opening stats on the transfer portal. That's coming up here in segment 2. But summer, it's coming, guys. Little behind the curtain here, and you'll find out more next week when I'm pre-recording some episode. I moved my little beach. I don't even want to call it a vacation because I'm going to be gone for like 4 days, but I moved my beach excursion from the end of the month to next week. So I'm super jacked about that. And with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on those family vacations, like I'm going to be on next week. Throw them in your bags and your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you're fueled and ready for those summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious foods for health. With Built Bar, you can have both. It's that easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order them right now. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy what you're doing. Have you tried the new Built Bar Puffs yet? We're going crazy for the Puffs here. They come in crazy flavors like banana cream pie and even churro. Who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro, right? And they're only 140 calories right now. Go ahead and sign me up for that. Know what my favorite flavor is? It is the cookies and cream. I speak about it all the time, but most of these Built Bars, they contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugars, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein, and like I said, all covered in 100% chocolate. Go to Built.com to get all your favorites today. Again, banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. All delicious, all new flavors coming out all the time. Check it all out at Built.com. And while you're there, that's Built.com while you're there. Use the promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That is at Built.com. All right, guys, time for the big announcements. For the first time ever, Locked On is hosting live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft. That's from the studios in Dallas. Pick-by-pick analysis from the local team of experts and the draft gurus. You guys probably tuned in last night to check it out. They did a fantastic job. Tune in all 3 days. Our draft team will guide you through every single pick, every single trade in real time. It all started, I guess, last night for the first round action, but it's available tonight and all weekend long. It's at the Locked On NFL YouTube page and on the Odyssey app. That is live coverage of the NFL Draft brought to you by the great team, local experts, national experts, and your college and NFL hosts, all from the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, I want to get into some eye-popping stats here, okay? This is pretty incredible regarding the transfer portal. So in the spirit of transparency, okay, the NCAA, and the NCAA is not for the transfer portal, of course. Mark Emmert, we dogged on him enough yesterday. I'm not going to do that today. But in the I guess the feeling of transparency, okay, they released some statistics on the years 2020 and 2021 in the transfer portal. 54% of FBS players who entered the portal in those 2 years enrolled at a new school. So that's just a hair over 50%. 54%, just a hair over half of the FBS players who entered the transfer portal in the year 2020 and 2021 signed on and played with a new school. 5% of those student athletes withdrew their name from the portal. 41% of those student athletes remained in the transfer portal. That is shocking to me, right? You continue to go on here. 950 FBS players entered the portal from August 2019 to July of 2020. That's 1,583 to 2,539 from July of 2021. The NCAA has seen the most active months coming in December and January, obviously, because that's the end of the football season. 38% of the 2021 entrants coming in those 2 months as well. Obviously, there's more and more people that have entered the portal because of the one-time transfer waiver. In 2020, there were 587 undergrad students who entered the portal and enrolled in a new school, whereas there were 950 in 2021. The sharp increase, obviously, is because of the one-time transfer waiver. The research shows from the NCAA that only 59% of scholarship FBS football players who entered their name in the transfer portal transferred to another school and received a scholarship at the next destination. Among those scholarship players who entered the portal, 33%, or 834 total, still remain active and 8% transferred without athletic aid. Now, a lot of these players, again, are walk-ons, so the numbers can be skewed a smidge, but that is just incredible, right? FBS football saw the most student athletes into the transfer portal at 2,538 of any sport. But men's basketball had the highest percentage of student athletes in the portal at 31%. That's 1,692 athletes. That was in the year of 2021. FBS saw 16% of its athletes into the portal. Women's basketball saw 22% of its athletes. That's all during a 12-month period. So, wow, I know that's a lot of numbers right now, but the big one you need to remember, okay? The big one that I just threw out right there. 59% of scholarship FBS football players who enter their name in the transfer portal transfer to another school and receive a scholarship at the next destination. For the years of 2020 and 2021, overall, 54% of FBS players who enter the portal enrolled at a new school. That's all sports wide. So again, it's like, is the grass really greener on the other side? People in these kids' ears right now, giving them bad information. I think we're seeing that a little bit. This is from Ross Dellinger of SI. He put out a little thread there on Thursday that I bookmarked and I thought was really, really good. Of course, Ross Dellinger does a fantastic job with SI now. And this is what he had to say. The annual record for FBS transfers entering the portal has been shattered. In 2020-2021 cycle, again, we mentioned this earlier, 2,654 transfers entered the portal. 8 months into the 2021-2022 cycle, the one we're in now, that number is now 2,669. So in the entire cycle last year, 2020 to 2021 transfer portal, there were 2,654 transfers entering the portal. 8 months into this cycle, 21 to 22, you're already at 2,669. That's about 20 players a team. Again, though many of those are walk-ons. What's the reasoning for this? Well, name, image, and likeness, especially in basketball, but in football as well, is a reason. The one-time transfer waiver and also the deadline given by May the 1st are getting guys or forcing guys into the portal a lot sooner than maybe what they are expected. So again, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, but that just goes to show you how many people enter the portal with the thoughts of, oh, I'm just frustrated. I'm not getting what I want here. I'm not on the depth chart where I want here. Coach said something to make me mad, whatever the case may be. They make an emotional decision. They enter the portal and the grass is not greener on the other side a lot of the times. Now, sometimes it is, for sure. Sometimes it is, but those numbers were just kind of shocking to me. We'll see what happens with Tennessee. Tennessee, the transfer portal giveth and tooketh away. It took so many of Tennessee's best players, Henry To'oTo'o, Eric Gray, and some more, okay? Quavaris Crouch, all those guys following the 2020 season. It gave them Javonte Payton. It gave them Hendon Hooker. It gave them Joe Milton. It gave them a couple other really nice role players that contributed big time for the team in 2021. Tennessee, how active will it be in the transfer portal, guys? I'm telling you, it's going to be active and it's going to be fast. Buckle up. I think Tennessee is going to be doing some good things in the transfer portal here in a little bit. Okay, so a lot of numbers there. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. But I just wanted to get those out there to you because I felt like those were very, very interesting. The top-ranked Volunteers baseball team in action at Lindsey Nelson Stadium for the final Friday, Saturday, Sunday weekend series of the season. The last 3 weekend series of the season moved to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That will start next week. But an Auburn team comes to town, very pesky Auburn team, Lindsay Crosby, who does the Locked On the Locked On MLB Draft Prospects. He's going to join the show. He also covers Auburn for Sports Illustrated. He's going to join the show next to preview a really good Auburn team. So don't go anywhere, and we'll tell you all about that series coming up next here on Locked On Vols. BetOnline, it's your number one source all season long for betting, stats, and sports information. You can find the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's basketball playoffs, the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline, it's your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports, even reality television, a whole lot more. And you can head on over to the website, check it all out right now. Get those future bets in there. The playoffs and basketball are going on right now. I know that I've been engaged at betonline.net just about every single night on the overs for the halves, the totals, the player props, all that and more. Baseball's there. You guys know I love that. And one of the favorite things I've done here recently is I have gotten in on some NASCAR wagering as well. And you can do that at betonline.net as well. Guys, check it out, betonline.net. It is where the game starts. We got a final segment left here of a Locked On Vols Friday edition and a big-time baseball series at Lindsey Nelson Stadium this weekend. It's Tennessee against Auburn, and here to break down Auburn's side of things is Lindsay Crosby, a fellow Locked On host. He is the host of Locked On MLB Prospects, but he also covers the Auburn Tigers for Sports Illustrated. Lindsay, thanks so much for joining us here.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so Auburn's a pesky team. I mean, I studied them on paper a lot earlier today in preparation for my work at my other couple of jobs, and it's a team that can hit. It's a team that's Sonny D's hitting like 450 on the season, which is incredible. But then you got Blake Rambush, who's leading the SEC in hits, which is just incredible. On base machines up there at the top of the lineup for Auburn. It's an Auburn team that's got some pretty good starting pitching, and the record's pretty fantastic: 30-12, 11-7, second in the SEC West right now. What's been so good for Auburn in this turnaround here in this new season?
So I think there's two factors that really have made Auburn be so much better than they were last year. And the first one is timely hitting. The offense wasn't necessarily bad last year, but the offense was very power dependent. And this year, outside of Sonny DiChiara, nobody has double-digit home runs. But everything is station-to-station baseball, getting timely hits. They've come back in quite a few games, and a lot of those comebacks are keyed off of, Blake Rambush is up with 2 on and 2 outs, and on a 2-2 count, he puts a ball into right field. And so one, just that timely hitting and being able to string together consecutive hits. And then the second thing is the pitching staff has learned a lot from the failures of last year. These guys were not the intended 1 through 3 in 2021. And because of injury, they had to do it, and they learned on the job. And you can see the benefits of that now when they kind of understand how better to navigate the second and third time through an order, when they understand how to pass the baton from the starter to the bullpen to get it to the closer. And really that's kind of been where they've improved from last year.
Speaking of the closer, from my research, it looks like Auburn, it uses about 6 or 7 guys, obviously, but it uses 2 guys more so than anybody. One of those guys, 11 saves so far on the season, and Blake Burkhalter. He's made 20 appearances. He's thrown 31 innings and a third, I believe. Looks like you guys, Auburn uses him quite a few, more than once in a weekend series. I believe he pitched every game of last series. What makes him so good and electric at the back end of those games?
So yeah, Auburn focuses a lot on Carson Skipper and Blake Burkhalter, the lefty and the righty. And for Burkhalter, really, he's got multiple different fastballs that he features. He's got the standard 4-seam that everybody seems to have. He throws a 2-seam from time to time, and then he's learned a cutter. Tim Hudson taught him that last year. He refined it over the summer and fall, and it's really proven to be a weapon, especially against righties. So the two of those guys together, they work really well in tandem. Auburn loves to deploy them back-to-back in game 1. They'll take a Hayden Mullins, a little bit more inefficient as far as the starters go. He may go 5 innings. They'll throw Skipper for 2. They'll throw Burkhalter for 2. And the reason they were both able to pitch 3 games last weekend is Auburn's tried to get a little bit better about finding places to steal outs here and there, taking somebody else out of the bullpen, and maybe you can finish up this inning without having to use a skipper and then go to Skipper. And maybe when Skipper's done, you can finish this inning with a Chase Alsop. And then you're only throwing Burkhalter 2 innings instead of 2 2/3. So that's really been their thing. And where they've struggled in past weekends has been in game 2, when they threw each of those guys 2+ innings in game 1 and didn't feel comfortable going back to them. And they've lost quite a few game 2s until they figured out that right bullpen mix.
Yeah, and that's something that I picked up on as well in my research. Trace Bride, 2-4, 4.24 ERA. That's the game 2 starter for Auburn. Some of those games have gotten out of hand, and the big reason for that is what you just mentioned, not using those 2 top relievers. But boy, has Auburn responded in a big way in game 3 of the series. Joseph Gonzalez, 6-0, a 171 earned run average on the season. I'm intrigued for that matchup on Sunday because Drew Beam had his first rough outing of the season last week, but he has been incredible. So I just mentioned the numbers for Joseph Gonzalez. He'll be countering Drew Beam, 8-0, 186 earned run average. That should be a fantastic showcase. What has Gonzalez been for Auburn this year? Why has he been so effective?
So he's been one of my favorite pitchers now at Auburn for about a year and a half. I've been banging the drum for him for a while. I'm glad it's finally all worked out. His big thing is he has a very devastating sinker, and he excels at inducing ground balls, inducing weak contact, and ultimately it's all come down to not leaving balls out over the plate. He likes to live in the bottom of the zone. He likes to live on the edges. And he's gotten much better as the season's progressed, especially since he came back from the finger injury, at not leaving mistakes that are hittable for folks to take him out of the park. And every now and then he'll do one. He'll give up a solo shot here, a solo shot there. But the fact that he induces ground balls, plus Auburn's very good defense behind him, has meant that he's been able to go deep into games. He had a complete game. I think it was a 2-run complete game against Vandy. He went 8 innings against LSU, and he went 7 innings against South Carolina, scoreless. And it's just, he's been very efficient, and he's been very good at preventing hard contact.
So Tennessee, obviously, it's swept Vanderbilt, it's swept Ole Miss, it's got 8 series sweeps on the season already. Just swept Florida in dramatics last Sunday.
Yeah,
Was challenged by Alabama, dropped the Friday game, but responded well. I'm intrigued for this one because I think Auburn is very comparable to Alabama. I think Auburn's a really, really good baseball team. It's going to be a challenge for the top-ranked Tennessee Volunteers, but obviously it's going to be a really big challenge for Auburn as well, as this is probably going to be the best opponent that it's faced all season long.
yeah. Auburn got their first sweep in SEC series play last week against South Carolina, and their reward is, okay, yeah, now go to the consensus #1 team in the country, go to their house and play 3 games. And then after that, when they come back, they get to host Arkansas, the #1 team in the West, for 3 games. Tough stretch here for Auburn. But like the big thing for me, and hitting coach Gabe Gross talked about this morning for the media availability, is everybody talks about this offense of Tennessee and how amazing this offense is. And I think that the pitching staff is overlooked a bit. And, Chase Dollander left in the Alabama game after taking that comebacker and hasn't pitched since then. So you just put a preseason All-American and Blade Tidwell back in there. And like, what can you tell Auburn fans about these 3 starters they're going to face this weekend? We know they're good. We know for the most part they're young, but like, what can you tell Auburn fans about these guys?
All right, I'll try to be brief, but I mean, it truly is an embarrassment of riches. So your Friday, Sunday starters are true freshmen. Chase Burns is going to be a top 10 pick in a couple of years if all goes well. He got back on track for the first time all season long. He looked like a freshman. He struggled against Alabama. He struggled against Missouri a little bit, but he has responded. He did a good job last week against Florida. The walks are a little high, but electric fastball, it moves. He went toe-to-toe with the #1 team at the time in Texas at Minute Maid Park and pitched into the 7th inning. I mean, he's been phenomenal. So Chase Burns doesn't lose on Fridays, all right? Dollander has been just as equally as impressive, the sophomore transfer from Georgia Southern, but he hit with that comebacker, as you mentioned. He missed last week's start. Not sure if he's going to be on the active roster this weekend. I think they're going to maybe want to rest him again before ramping him back up next week. But in slides in Blade Tidwell, who could be a Friday night starter on any other team in the conference, probably, and any other team in the country. A freshman All-American last year, a preseason All-American, and he's continuing to get stretched out. He started last week in Florida, pitched 72 pitches. He'll probably go further if all things go well on Saturday as well. And then Drew Beam, I already mentioned him a little bit. He does not throw the ball as hard. He paints the corners very, very well. He's developed a really nice changeup. The starting pitching has been phenomenal. He was roughed up at Florida for the first time all season long. Intrigued to see how Drew Beam responds. So you got 4 starting pitchers, and that's going to bode well for Tennessee in the playoff push. But I'll tell you this as well. The bullpen has been fantastic. Will Mabry, Camden Sewell, Ben Joyce. Everyone in college baseball knows about Ben Joyce, but it's been the Mabrys, the Sewells, the Redmond Walshes who have been equally or maybe even more impressive than what Ben Joyce has been this year out of that pen.
Yeah, and that's something, I mean, people who are fans of Pitching Ninja have seen Ben Joyce throw in 103 and 104, but how the bullpens match up definitely is where I think Tennessee has the advantage when it comes to pitching, simply because Auburn relies so heavily on those 2 guys. And from what I've seen, and whether it's the research or watching games, I mean, there's 5 or 6 or 7 guys that Tennessee is just comfortable to roll out there in any situation versus lefties or righties, early, late, lead, or deficit. And so I think for Auburn, it's going to be working counts deeper, getting pitch counts up, and trying to find a bullpen guy who's having an off day is where they're going to have success. And I question whether or not whether the depth in the Tennessee bullpen is good enough to let that strategy work this weekend or not.
Yeah, and I think that's the same strategy for Tennessee. It's work, try to get in that bullpen, try to get past the first two guys, because I think if Tennessee can work the counts deep, which, I mean, this is an aggressive team. It leads the nation in home runs, right? So that's going to be an issue for them, but try to work into that bullpen, I think is going to help them out as well. A couple more things about Tennessee. I mean, we all know about the lineup. It's very aggressive. Jordan Beck's going to be a first-round pick. He is every bit as good as advertised. Drew Gilbert has been a postseason hero for Tennessee, and he's hitting that hard of the lineup, starting to swing the bat like we know he can. But I'll tell you what, the surprise of the team, the surprise maybe of the SEC has been Trey Lipscomb. I mean, he is on a torrid pace right now. He's a guy that sat behind two guys who were drafted pretty high, and now he's gotten his opportunity to shine, and Trey Lipscomb has been really, really fantastic. But Tennessee overall, there's just not a maybe, Evan Russell at 8, Cortland Lawson at 9, potentially. When that lineup's got Jared Dickey in there, they're really good at the top. I mean, Jarrell Ortega is another guy that's, sat and waited his turn, and now he's broke out in the big way. He was SEC Player of the Week last year. So Tony Vitello has done an excellent job recruiting. He and Frank Anderson have done an even better job developing, and that's kind of why Tennessee is where it is right now. Quickly before we wrap up, what do you forecast for this series? 3 games. Does Auburn get 1? Does Auburn get 2? How do you see this playing out?
So my thought process here is I'm going to call Auburn to take one of the 3. Alabama kind of showed the blueprint, right? Take one of the freshmen, put them in a bad situation, and put up runs against them, and then hold that lead. So I'm going to have Auburn going 1-2 this weekend, and they feel like they can do more. They're very confident about their ability to play together as a team, and what they can do against Tennessee. They relish this challenge. So either way, going to be a great series.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with you. I think Tennessee will take 2 of 3. Tennessee, again, is a program record for already 8 sweeps in the season, which is just incredible, right? I don't see Tennessee sweeping Auburn. I think Auburn is a good baseball team. So I think this will be 3 really, really good games. I like Tennessee on Friday. I like Tennessee on Saturday. I think Sunday is going to be one to circle. I mean, they're all going to be one to circle, but I think Sunday's one that's like, okay, this one could be really, really good potentially. But Lindsay, thanks so much for stopping by, man. Again, host of Locked On MLB Prospects, a baseball guy, big baseball guy, says so in your Twitter at Crosby Baseball. And appreciate you joining us, man. We'll have to do this again. I can talk baseball for hours on end, that's for sure.
Same here. I literally do it every day on my show. So thanks for having me, Eric.
Awesome. All right, you guys check out Lindsay Crosby if you're baseball fans. And, of course, we're going to talk more Tennessee baseball and those prospects as the season goes on and we move closer to draft. He does an awesome job. And, of course, he covers the Auburn Tigers as well. That's going to do it here for a Friday show. Can't thank you enough for making Locked On Vols your first listen. We talk VFLs in the NFL draft. We looked at recent history. We looked at first-round history. And, of course, we're going to look at the players on Monday who are drafted over the weekend. Gave some interesting stats on the FBS transfer portal. I mean, it surprised me. I know it surprised you guys. And, of course, we got some good word on Auburn baseball from Lindsay Crosby. Guys, remember, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show tonight and Saturday as well. Locked On NFL YouTube page. And there'll be some VFLs drafted. And, you might even see me on there when some are drafted. So check that out. Support the Locked On Podcast Network. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Guys, enjoy the weekend. Be safe. And we will talk again on Monday, everybody.